Welcome back, folks. They are just getting going again out in Florida. But before we get you back to court, we have an exciting new true crime series to tell you about. Court TV's Interview with a Killer premieres this Sunday at 8 p.m. Award-winning journalist David Scott takes you into high-security prisons across the country and inside the minds of convicted murderers. The first episode features Brian Stephen Smith, a husband-turned-serial killer who hunted and killed vulnerable women in Alaska. Take a look.
I've always suspected that some people aren't at all who they appear to be. To his wife, Brian Stephen Smith was a loving husband. To the Marriott hotel staff, he was a good colleague. To his mistress, he was a spinner of dark sexual fantasies. But to Kathleen Henry, an Alaska native living on the streets of Anchorage, Brian Stephen Smith was a stranger who offered a warm bed and then did something monstrous.
Good evening. We're learning more tonight about the weeks surrounding the hotel killing of 30-year-old Kathleen Henry.
39 photos and 12 videos show in graphic detail the final hours of a dark-haired woman. The SD card where the files were stored was labeled homicide at Midtown Marriott.
She was like all beat up. I mean, her face was not even recognizable.
Brian Stephen Smith was found guilty in February 2024 of murder, sexual assault, and misconduct involving a corpse. How are we doing, guys?
We're set.
We're good? Okay. And now, for the first time, he has agreed to tell me his story and to answer for these crimes. Well, Brian, we're here because we really want to understand the mindset and motivations behind your actions in this case, okay? Tell me, why are you here today talking to us?
Because you asked me to.
You could have said no, but you agreed. Why?
Yes, yeah, but well, I have my side of the story as well that I'd like to get out.
You want to be heard?
Yes, I have to get something out.
All right, that's what the story's all about. Joining me now to talk about this new show is the host, David Scott. David, thank you so much for joining us here at Court TV and for this wonderful program that you've put together. Really exciting stuff. But I have to say this, I couldn't tell, they showed your face when he sort of walked in the room, if there was a little bit of fear there. Certainly, it had to have been chilling coming face to face with a guy like this.
It's intense and yet fascinating, you know, dark and yet interesting. You know, this is I've interviewed lots of different kinds of people, but this is different. The intimacy with which we're confronting convicted murderers who are there for their own reasons, frankly. Mm-hmm. It's a different kind of engagement.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, I mean, coming face to face with evil, I mean, we're going to call it evil, you call it what it is. Yeah. I mean, what was that like?
Well, in the case of Brian Stephen Smith, you know, here's a man who by day was a dutiful husband on the straight and narrow, but by night would troll the streets of Anchorage, outside of homeless shelters and liquor stores, looking for prey for the most vulnerable women, usually Alaska Native women who were in crisis. And so evil is the right word. Mm-hmm. The episode revolves around this double life that he led and the devastating consequences of these crimes, both to the families and to the Alaska Native community.
Yeah, no question about it. Now, you also spoke with a woman who found a very key piece of evidence that actually led police to this guy. Tell me about that.
That's right, Michael. You know, one of the chilling things about this case is how close he came to getting away with it, but for the courage of another woman who was living on the street, who he picked up one night, and who, as fate would have it, pocketed his cell phone When he was outside of the car, she reached down, felt it, pocketed it, took it back to the tent in the woods where she was living, turned it on and pressed play, and thus was discovered the smoking gun evidence in this case.
Let's take a quick listen to some of that right now.
What was your first impression?
He was nice. We went everywhere. We hung out out at the airport and watched the planes and stuff. I was with him till about 5, 6 in the morning.
All night long?
Yeah.
When Smith stopped at a gas station to use the ATM, Kessler found herself alone in his car.
That's when I dropped my phone.
In the car?
In his truck, yeah.
You were in the front passenger seat?
Yeah, and when I reached down, I grabbed 2 phones. And you get that chill feeling, you know?
You just got a vibe from it?
Yeah.
A feeling?
Yeah, that something was not right.
With Smith still inside, Kessler pocketed his cell phone, a decision on which the entire case would hinge.
I went back to my tent and I turned it on, look and see if I recognize any phone numbers or if I recognize anybody on the pictures, and that's when I found it.
You need your dog.
That's a sick motherfucker.
It sort of captures it. You know, this is all about him and his acts, but tell me a little bit more. You talked about the victims being Native women, a lot of them Native women in crisis. Tell me a little bit more about that.
That's right. Well, Alaska Native women are disproportionately represented in the list of missing and murdered indigenous people in that part of the country. In this case, Brian Stephen Smith was clearly preying on them, and he talks about how he, because of his roots, he's from South Africa, that he's more comfortable around Native people. And in his twisted mind, you know, he feels some affinity, which in reality is more of a predator-prey relationship than anything else. And so these crimes, you know, are devastating not just to the families, but to the entire community that has been so traumatized and targeted. Because they are among the most vulnerable in the community, and so Brian Stephen Smith's case really puts that issue front and center.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, you know, no doubt that these crimes were brazen, really are crimes against this community in general. My understanding was that you learned some new details that you actually were able to confront him with during the program. Let's take a quick look at that one, then we'll discuss.
I don't like hurting people.
You don't?
No.
And you're telling me now that what you told the police is false, that you did not murder Veronica Abhishek?
No. You must remember that interrogation was done under duress.
Well, all interrogations are arguably done under duress, but there was nothing unfair about it. And in fact, you could have stopped talking at any point. And instead, you volunteer a completely different story about an earlier crime.
I was in a weakened state of mind. It made sense to me there that I need to cover all my tracks. Alicia might have told them that story, and I don't tell them, and they think I'm lying.
David, you spent time in that sort of intimate situation with this person. What can you tell us about him? What were your takeaways from talking to him, like who this person was and what was he looking for in doing these interviews?
Yeah, well, you know, this is a man who confessed full-throatedly to police, detailed the crimes, and you know, after he was confronted about the murder of Kathleen Henry, several hours into the interrogation, he turns to the police and he says, "You guys in a hurry to get home?" Now, you know what the police are thinking, right? And so they said, "No, you want to talk some more?" And he volunteers details about an earlier murder. Now, sitting with me, you know, months later, since his conviction, he's trying to recant all of those confessions. And in his twisted mind, he is making the case that those confessions were, one, coerced, but also based on fictional role play with his former mistress. Obviously, obviously there's no credibility to that, and there is a mountain of evidence against him. His guilt is certain.
David Scott, thank you so much for joining us. We're really looking forward to checking this out. Again, folks, that premieres this Sunday, 8 p.m. on Court TV. We'll be looking forward to it and subsequent episodes as well. Again, David Scott, thank you so much for joining us today. Truly appreciate it.